So welcome to my YouTube channel. That's what we call The Good Life. So today I'm going to be sowing some seeds, and I'm going to show you the process that I go through when I sow all my seeds in pots. Now, if you've not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, you know what I'm going to say. If you could please do so, because you'll get lots of helpful hints and tips all throughout the year from my home garden, my allotment, and also my home kitchen. Now, the first thing I do when I'm sowing some seeds, I do a mixture of multi-purpose and Coir. The reason I do this is because I went on an organic gardening course at River Cottage quite some years ago, and they recommended mixing Coir with multi-purpose when you sow your seeds. So the first thing I've done is I've got some Coir in my bucket there. I buy large blocks of it and I break it up. So that was the whole block there, so I've got another one to use later in the year. And we've broken one of the big blocks in half, and all I've got to do is cover it with some water and wait for it to expand. Now I'm doing this in advance of sowing my seeds. So there we go, just pour some water over it, and then I will just leave it overnight to expand. I might have to add a little bit more water. If I put too much water in, I'll have to add a little bit more Coir in as well. But what we'll do is we'll come back when this is expanded, and I'll start showing you how I sow my seeds. So it's the next day, and my Coir and water are all fully soaked together. It seemed like quite a lot of water at the time, but it does actually take up quite a lot of water. I always think it's a little bit better for it to be a little bit soggier than too dry, because obviously the seeds need to be in a moist environment anyway. So that's all ready. So the things I've got ready to start sowing my seeds, I've obviously got some seeds. I've got some labels. Very important that you label everything. You'll think you'll remember, but you won't. Some trays to start them off in. So most things I'll start off in these trays today, but I will start my leeks off in a deeper one. I've also got some vermiculite to put over the top. I've got some multi-purpose compost. I've got a piece of wood so I can level off the top of the compost, and I've also got a propagator over there ready, which obviously won't stay out here, it will be indoors and it'll be plugged in to help the seeds get off to a start, because all the seeds we're starting off now, you know, it'd be too cold for me to have them outside, and they wouldn't germinate even if I had them inside most likely. So a heated propagator is really, really useful. So it's still quite early to be sowing things in February, so I won't be doing too much this month. But I will be doing a few things, because for a start it means you can stagger things over the next few months rather than having to do loads of things all at once. And I do think that some things slightly benefit from being started a little bit earlier as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll do about a 50-50 mix of compost and the Coir. So I'm just going to scoop some of this into the tray. If you've not got one of these, they are really, really useful. I really recommend it, and much easier to mix things up in something like this. So there we go, there's some compost there, and then roughly an equal amount. And getting one of these big scoops is also really useful to do as well. Getting them in pet stores, maybe garden centre. I can't exactly remember where I got this one from, but this is really useful as well. So I think adding the Coir in, it just makes it all a little bit finer, and it means I haven't got to buy seed compost as well. And then all you've got to do is just mix it up with your hands. And if you think you need a little bit more, which I think I do actually, because I think that wasn't quite half, I will do that. Try and break up any lumps that you've got as well, because you don't want big clumpy lumps when you're starting off seeds. Another couple of scoops of that, I think. I'll buy the Coir in great big blocks, and then I cut it up because it's just easier. And the other thing is it's easier for storage as well, having some of the Coir, because it doesn't take up quite so much room. So there we go, that's the Coir and the multi-purpose mixed together. So that's my seed mix done. I'll just move that out of the way a little bit. I get a tray out. I think these are just repurposed when I've got other plants, to be honest. I do that quite a lot. I very rarely buy trays, I just reuse old ones. I think one of the things when people sow seeds, they often put too much compost in, because when you're just starting them off as seeds, they don't really need that much, because they're going to be potted on quite quickly. And also, where do you put the soil up to? Now, and how do you pat it down? So I've had a lot of people, how hard do I pat it down? How much compost do I put in? Well, you basically really mound it up, and you just gently, very gently, tap it with the wooden block like that, and then you scrape it off the top. If you've got any lumpy bits, obviously take them off, but just like that. So you compact it down ever so slightly. You're not pushing it down really, really hard. You're just gently patting it and then scraping the top off. So that's the basic foundation of sowing seeds. So the next bit we need to do is to add some seeds. So let's have a look and see what I've got. So I have here, I have some bright lights chard, I have some tomatoes, some kale, I've got some chili peppers there. I've got, these aren't obviously edibles, but I've decided this year I was going to grow some statice. They're really nice as cut flowers and they dry really nicely as well. And also some leeks. Now the leeks are the only one that I won't put in there. I'll start them off in there because what I'll do is they won't get potted on. So the difference with these seeds, I will start these off on here, and as soon as they're big enough to handle, they'll be potted on into separate pots. With the leeks, I start them off in there and they stay in there until about June time, until I'm about to put them in the ground, and I don't fill them right up to the top in there either. So we'll show you that one slightly differently. So I'll do one of these and I'll do one of those so you know what you're doing. So shall we start off with tomatoes first? So I've got a variety called Tomtastic. So I've never grown that one before, but I thought I'd just give it a go. So this one doesn't have many seeds in it, only has 10 seeds in it, so I'll be spreading them out quite a bit on this tray. So let's just get them out. You can mix trays and put different things on different sides of the trays, but one of the beauties of having a tray this small is that you can fit all of them in one tray rather than having to, plus the fact that then you can cross seeds and get them muddled up, and yeah, it's just easier to do them this way. So let's just get the tomatoes out. This is the fiddly bit. So they're quite tiny, and with some of these F1 tomatoes you don't get an awful lot of seeds, and sometimes they get caught right in the bottom there. So if we just have a look what we've got here. It tells me I've got 10, but it doesn't look like I've got 10 there, but maybe I have. And indeed I've got one stuck right in the bottom, which I'm going to have to scrape out in a minute because I'm not going to waste that. So all you do, don't just chuck them in there. One of the reasons you don't just throw them in there is when they grow they'll get really tangled. So it is much better just to space them out, which is what I'm going to do. And then the next bit of the journey is you can just cover them, if you've not got vermiculite, you can cover them with a very tiny amount of compost. But when you use vermiculite, it's just a much easier way of the seeds growing through. It stops mould, or less likely to get moulds and things like that on the top. So it's really worth getting this. I mean, I bought a great big amount of it. It came in a bag, not in this tub, and it will just last you for absolutely ages. So then what you do is you just sprinkle it over the top, like I'm doing now. A nice thick layer, and we'll pat that off as well in a minute as well. So I won't mound it quite like I did with that. And if I'm honest, I should be doing this in another tray. So actually let's do it on that, so when I scrape it off I can pour the surplus back into the pot. So very similar to what we did with the compost. Spread it out a little bit more, obviously being very careful not to dislodge the seeds. Gently pat it down like that, very gently, so you're patting it down but you're not pushing it really, really hard. And if you've got any surplus, which I don't think I've got a tremendous amount actually, but if you did, you would just gently, very gently scrape it off. And again, you want to be careful because you don't want to dislodge any of the seeds that are in there. So that's one pot already done. And obviously if you did these in individual pots, it would be exactly the same way of doing it. And with small seeds, with bigger seeds not so much, but with small seeds like this, using the vermiculite is particularly useful, and of course tagging them. Now I've got some tags here, but this one very handily came with a tag which I can just pop in there. I'll also show you how we water things in a propagator as well. You don't just water over the top of them. So we'll do that. Next one we'll do are the leeks. So we fast forwarded it a little bit. I've put some compost in there for the leeks. So I'll gently pat that down just with the tops of my hand. Again, I'm not pressing really, really hard. I'm just gently firming it, very, very gently, just so that it's not all lumpy bumpy like it was. And then let's get the leeks out and we'll sprinkle the leeks in. These ones you can be a lot more generous with how you sprinkle them in. So it's not quite so. When you get tomatoes, if they, because of the way they grow, they really easily tangle. Things like leeks, not so much. Obviously you don't want to spread them too thickly, but you can spread them. You don't have to lay each one out individually with something like this. So like with a lot of things, it's common sense really with what you do. So this variety is a Leon. So I'm not sure I've grown that one before, so it's always nice to try new things. So the seeds are little dark black seeds, you can see there. And then just gently sprinkle them. I won't put the whole packet on, just gently sprinkle them. You won't be able to see them because the soil's quite dark, but you can be more generous. I've probably done about half the packet there. So, and with these you can do exactly the same and put some vermiculite on the top. So just gently cover it with vermiculite. We won't pat this off, we'll just roughly put on here what we need. Although we need to label everything, if I'm honest, this would be one that I might not label because it'll be the only thing that will be in a deep pot like this. So that's that one done. So I've sown all the seeds I can fit in my propagator for today. I've still got a couple more to do, but as soon as these have germinated, these will come out and the new ones will go in, and I'll do those then. So I've got some bright lights chard, I've got my tomatastic, I've got some dwarf cow, and I've got my leeks there. Now with all these ones, because they're so delicate and so shallow, if I just poured water on the top of them, it would all spray everywhere and it would ruin. So I've got kind of like, you can get like capillary matting. This is some other kind of matting that I use. It's just reused from one of those food boxes that you get, because I don't like throwing anything away, but because it's fully compostable, it does exactly the same job. So what I do is basically just fill the bottom of the tray with water. You put a lot in there and it seems like you're doing too much because the matting needs to fill with water, and enough water needs to go into it so that the water absorbs right up to the top of the soil. So you water them that way as opposed to watering them over the top. So this seems like tons, absolutely tons when you first do it. I'm going to start off with that much, and then in an hour or two I'm going to check how much has absorbed in, and then decide whether I need to pour a little bit off or whether I need to pour a little bit more on. Now because this is a very, very deep pot, this is never going to absorb all the water right up to the very top, but with leeks I prefer to do them in there because, like I said, I won't be transplanting them on. The next time they move will be in June and they go straight into the ground, and when I do them like that, so I've got a bit of a gap, it then supports the leeks that grow up, and it just saves me a lot of work. So you'll water ones like that with a rose. Now you could say I could do those like that, but I don't even really like doing that with these, but I've got no choice because the water won't absorb up. So you just gently sprinkle it over the top. So it's really important that you get one of these for your watering can when you are watering delicate seedlings. Like if you watered seeds direct into the ground when it warms up, again you'd need to water it with something like that rather than just with something like that, otherwise it would ruin. So I do hope you've enjoyed watching me sow my seeds. I've given you some ideas of how you can sow your seeds and you'll feel more confident doing it. If you want to let me know what you're sowing at the moment, and if you've got any questions or queries, then as ever, please do put them in the comments and we will answer them as soon as we can.